Well, hello, all you revelers and merrymakers out there. I hope you're doing great. It's good to see you. It's good for you to see me. I just wanted to go live really quickly and talk about a certain book that we all know and love. Can you see it? It's The Shining. Yep. It's that spooky book that is great for all times of the year. It's great for, this is my copy that I got from a friend a really long time ago. And it's good for all times of the year. It's good for Halloween and just all throughout the winter season. Yeah. So due to the fact that that it is that special time of the year, I'm going to go on and tell you a little bit about this. This is a Reading Rage Live, and I'm alive. Yeah, I can't scream too much, I'll be honest. I've been pretty sick, and I'll be honest, I have had my coworkers call me that they were sick. A lot of them have been out. Everybody told me today, they were like, you're not the only one who's been sick. My family's been sick, and so I can definitely tell y'all that it is a Haktua season. So please excuse me if I'm gonna if I have to cough or anything during this live. I will tell you that I will have to get a drink at some point, because honestly, that is going to help me with my dryness and everything, my cough that's going on. And the only drink I really want to drink right now is not Martians, it's not martinis, it's water, liquid death water. Yeah. So it's so refreshing, it can kill my cough dead. Murder your thirst, liquid death. Anyways, insert creepy smile here. And today I'm actually going to drink mountain water, still drinking water. Oh, hey, what's up? And so, all right, Happy New Year, everyone. Let's crack a liquid death. And in the spirit of the holiday, like I said, all this cold weather that I've received, it's really, also the winter vortex part 2 is coming, apparently, this coming week. So everyone get prepared for that. And because of that, I just decided to want to speak to you about a pretty sick book of that nature. Liquid Death. It's perfect to murder your thirst. Insert product placement here. They're not official sponsors, so there's that. I was going to do more of that. Oh, so you could see the liquid death in the background. That's perfect. That's another box. You got a sneak peek, but I'm not going to really show it to you until my next live. That's my next liquid death box that you got a sneak peek, but you can't see it anymore. So yeah, I guess because of the spirit of the weather and stuff, I wanted to talk to you, and because I'm sick, I wanted to talk to you about a sick book. And the title of this, it's a really long title. I wanted to have something that was very descriptive, and once I came up with that, I thought that it would be perfect for this live. It's Ghost in a Shell, The Shining, a reflection on stories representing real-life ghosts in trauma and book bans healing culture. So I guess, what happens when we see ourselves in a book? What happens when you watch a scary movie or read a frightening book, right? Why were they even invented? Well, ghost stories were invented to make sure people stayed on the right path, or on the path. And so we take even like folklore and like old stories that have been adapted, and we think of their origin, right? We think of like Grimm stories, and say like even before Grimm, like there were other folk stories that have now been kind of more innocent but have bloodier versions, like the Little Red Riding Hood. In its one of its forms it was actually more gruesome, and is a metamorphical story about rape and murder, right? And so Little Red goes off on this path with this strange big bad wolf, and he eventually finds her again at her grandmother's place because she leads him there essentially. And when she gets there, she has this like her grandmother, who's the wolf in disguise, serves her this like strange viscous soup. And if you've heard of that version, then you understand what she's eating. And we see this story, the Little Red Riding Hood. Why? Because women were not supposed to go off the path, because single women during that time period would be ostracized from their community if a rumor of a bad reputation went around. And then that would affect not only themselves, but like all of the women in their household and all the family to come, right? Generations. And so insert Sexy Mr. Darcy from Jane Austen's novels, and she writes a lot about this, about how people were so judgmental, and how Mr. Darcy comes and saves Elizabeth Bennet and her family's reputation because of, and he has to pay off Mr. Wickham because Lydia marries him in like a quick marriage, right? And so women had no rights of their own. They weren't able to own homes. They didn't have the ability to have their own bank accounts or savings. They had very limited means as far as like jobs that were available to them. And I mean, if you were a working class woman, even if you were upper class, you were dependent on the men in your family. And so like a husband and a marriage meant a lot of times literal life or death situations for a person or their entire family. And so these like scary stories about Little Red Riding Hood going off of the path and following some big bad man would be, just to help girls be mindful of their reputation, and so that wouldn't affect marriages for the rest of their family for generations to come, right? And so little girls had to be mindful to walk the line, so to speak. And what about like my culture, like his Latino culture? So we'll take like La Llorona for existence. So La Llorona is this story that's meant to keep children from doing several things, right? Going out, sneaking out by themselves, playing too close to running water, wandering off with strangers, whatever their gender, male, female, other. Just be careful. If you don't know them, stranger danger. And so scary stories were made to teach lessons. Their themes, though, can be gruesome and having to do with blood and all of these things, even sexual content and metaphors. They were so that way kids could learn and keep themselves safe, right? And so there's these themes and motifs behind them. And Stephen King's The Shining, I feel, is no different. And in lieu of all these book bans, the King went on Instagram's threads and sarcastically said, "Woo, go me," because several of his books were banned in certain states. And so I wanted to do this Reading Rage Live on like the power of books and how they can provide coping mechanisms for people in domestic violence situations, or whether it be from family, friends, or peers in social settings, maybe even in the workplace. And so people who've lived with abuse in their household or workplace, true crime and horror fantasy can make a larger audience aware of, like, hey, remember that you never know what happens behind closed doors. And so I just wanted to say also, since Mr. Jack Nicky's son is in Smile 2, I was actually reading about it, and no, I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to be talking about Smile 2 today, but he said something like, I don't want to do what my dad did. He's like, I'm going to do my own thing, and I want to respect his legacy. He's like, but I know I'm not going to be him. Like, I can't be him, but I'm going to try it my own way. And just the idea that, he respects his father's reputation and legacy. So I thought that was really interesting that came up. And so all of this made me really think about the book, The Shining, and how really it's so gory compared to, I feel like, the movies and the miniseries. It's so gory and it's really graphic, and I just didn't think that anything could compare to the way that Stephen King sets up his dialogue and his sequence of events as he's laying them out. It just blindsides you a lot of times with how gory it is and how you have to read between the lines. So I thought that was really interesting. So all of that culminated to me making this Reading Rage Live, because I'd been thinking about it for a while, and it kind of pushed me to finally say, okay, well, I want to write it out and do it. And so I wanted to make some key gruesome parts of the book stand out for maybe people that haven't read the book, because it's really important. If you've only seen the movies, The Shining, then I want to show you a couple of parts in the book that I really like and that talk about really important things that might be graphic, but I think important for audiences. And so I'll just go into, like, there's the part with the wasps, which is on page, I think on mine, it's on page 122, 123-ish, around there. And how even though Wendy told Jack, don't bring the wasp's nest into where our son's going to be sleeping, the wasp starts stinging Danny in his sleep, and Jack kind of flips out on Wendy and cusses at her and is like, just do what I say, right? And so she's trying to tell him, listen to me, don't do that, and he still does it. And then he gets even angrier and takes it out on her and I don't know, I don't want to say like gaslighting, but definitely not taking accountability for how he speaks to her and how he treats her, right? And then we see another part about Bluebeard and like this idea of manipulation, and how, yes, the house is manipulating them, and that's another part where, we just think about, they say, okay, don't go into a certain room, but the key is there. And so Danny ends up going in and getting choked, which by this ghost, which could be a metaphor for being raped, right, by an older woman who's seen as a ghost because of all the trauma, like it's just everything that he goes through in that moment, where there's like marks left on him, and like just the different levels of meaning that are behind that scene, of how even a little boy can get hurt by an older woman, right? And so it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman or whatever their orientation is. Kids just need to be careful around people that they don't know, right? And have their boundaries. But also parents need to explain the dangers of things to their children and keep an eye on them, right? Don't just take it for granted that they're going to listen. If you're going to have the key in plain sight, but you're going to get mad that they grab the key, then that's just setting them up for disaster, and it's a little manipulative, right? And so then we see in chapter 26, page 208, this is one of my key favorite moments in the book, and I'll just be honest. I'm gonna drink some liquid death. Liquid death. Murder your thirst. Oh, I'm sorry. Deathtoplastic. I always do that to you, don't I, Liquid Death? That's why you don't want to sponsor me. This is mountain water. It's still. So there's no bubbles, in case you're the type of person that just wants a good water and doesn't like the bubbles. Bubbles are nice because sometimes you do want to burp and let that little gas out that you have in your tummy. And your sick tummy. Or maybe you don't and you just want some water. It's up to you. So I'm going to say that this part in chapter 26 is probably one of my favorite gory parts in the book. That's just like kind of really visceral, right, when you read it. And so Jack Torrance is thinking back on when he was younger and how his dad would sometimes get like so drunk and be so rough that he would pick him up in the middle of the night and like kind of do this like elevator game is what he would call it. But one time he picked him up so hard he dropped him, but he didn't just drop him, he threw him. And so he threw him across the hallway. And then he goes on to say how his father would come home after working in the hospital and his mother had dinner, and it was him and his sister and his older brothers. And his father had a cane, right? And he was a huge man. And I'll just read it to you really quickly. He said something about coffee. To this day, Jack was sure it had been coffee. That his father said, Mama had opened her mouth to answer, and then the cane whickering through the air, smashing against her face. Blood spurted from her nose. Becky screamed. Mama's spectacles dropped into her gravy. The cane had been drawn back and had come down again, this time on the top of her head, splitting her scalp. Mama had dropped to the floor. He had been out of his chair and around to where she lay dazed on the carpet, brandishing the cane, moving with a fat man's grotesque speed and agility, little eyes flashing, jowls quivering as he spoke to her, just as he had always spoken to his children during such outbursts. Now, by Christ, I guess you'll take your medicine now. God damn, puppy. Whelp. Come on. Take your medicine. The cane had gone up and down on her 7 more times before Brett and Mike got a hold of him, dragged him away, wrestled the cane out of his hand. Jack. Parentheses, little Jackie now. He was little Jackie now, dozing and mumbling on a cobwebby camp chair while the furnace roared into hollow life behind him. Knew exactly how many blows it had been because each soft whump against his mother's body had been engraved on his memory, like the irrational swipe of a chisel on stone. And so it goes on in detail and how his mother woke up and he was like, I could recall word for word what she said next. And it was, who's got the newspaper? Your daddy he wants the funnies. Is it raining yet? And so just like the idea of how his brother calls the doctor, he doesn't want to say over an open phone line what had happened. He asks the doctor to come. The doctor comes into their house and he's just like looking around and he's like, she fell off the stairs. And that's what the dad says. And he's like, yeah, but why is there blood on the table? And the dad's like, oh, I used it to wipe her face. And he's like, so her glasses flew all the way from the stairs to her gravy. And the dad's like, they probably just fell off when I got her to the table. And then it says what horrified him the most is that she corroborated the dad's story. The mom didn't stand up for herself. And so, and this part where, like that I just read, it was chiseled on his memory like stone. How this affects someone for the rest of their life, right? And then the chapter ends with him hearing his father's voice through the radio. And of course it's just this violence of, you need to kill your family. You need to unalive your family. Sorry. And how Jack's like trying to fight it. And he's like, no, you're dead. Like I'm my own man. Like I'm not going to be like you. In this generational trauma that you see in alcoholism and how Jack is trying to be sober. It's just that substance abuse, that alcoholism, that trying to fight that and being able to start a new life, right? And so that's one part, right? We see manipulation, we see spousal abuse and domestic violence in here. And then we also go into social abuse and peer pressure, right? At the New Year's party. And just because everyone is expecting you to do something and experiencing something does not mean that you have to do it. You can do your own thing in your own way and still hang out with your friends. You don't have to get inebriated or do whatever it is that they're doing. Vote a certain way. You can vote whatever way or believe whatever ideology or have whatever religion you choose, right? Wear whatever you want to wear. Liquid death. Death to plastic. So that's why this is so poignant right here. This part is so graphic. When I read it, I like always bow down to the king. Like, honestly, I really do. This is like around page 326, 327 for me. It's chapter 44. And Jack speaking to Grady at the bar. And Grady is trying to tell him that the manager, who's the hotel itself, like the embodiment of the hotel, is trying to get him to take care of his family, of Wendy and of Danny. And so in between all of this whole page, there's like pages of Grady and Jack speaking over ghost drinks, right? And it's gin and straight gin. It's martinis. And so we'll have like a whole page of Grady and Jack speaking. And then all of a sudden, the party that's going on in the background will surface into the page. And so you'll have them talking, and all of a sudden, Grady will be saying, "A thankless child is sharper than a serpent's tooth," Grady said, handing him a drink. "I do believe that the manager could bring your son into line, and your wife would shortly follow. Do you agree, sir?" He was suddenly uncertain. This is Jack, right? He goes, but if they could just leave. I mean, after all, it's me the manager wants, isn't it? It must be me. Because, and then he thinks, because why? He should know, but suddenly he didn't. Oh, his poor brain was swimming. And then we see the revelry in the background. And it's, "Bad dog," Derwent was saying loudly, to a counterpoint of laughing. "Bad dog to piddle on the floor." And then it goes back to Grady and Jack. "Of course you know," Grady said, leaning confidentially over the cart. "Your son's attempting to bring an outside party into it. Your son has a very great talent, one that the manager could use to even further improve the Overlook, to further enrich it, shall we say. But your son's attempting to use that very talent against us. He's willful, Mr. Torrance, sir. Willful." And so it goes on, and just before that, Derwent's partner, she's talking about Dogman and how Dogman's name is Roger, and Roger was once a lover of Derwent, and that they spent some time together over a summer. Liquiddeath. Deathtoplastic. And now he just bullies him all the time. He just basically used him. He used him that summer, and now he just kind of is like a gimp to them, in essence. And so they make him chug. He has this like wolf mask on, and they make him chug a whole bottle of champagne. And so this whole 2 pages goes by, and then all of a sudden you just see one line, literally one sentence, and it says, "Bad dog," Derwent was saying loudly, to counterpoint of laughter. "Bad dog to piddle on the floor." And then all of a sudden he goes, "Your son's using that talent against us. He's trying to bring in an outsider. He's willful, Mr. Torrance." And then he goes, "Outside party?" Jack asked stupidly. Grady nodded. "Who?" About how the hotel's going to take care of Jack, Wendy, and Danny if Jack refuses to. So that's really, really interesting how it just goes from paragraph and paragraph and paragraph of Jack and Grady talking to Derwent and the party's literal abuse and bullying, hazing of Roger. And Roger's like whining at the end because he's so drunk and like messed up, and they're like making him do all of these things. That's just kind of splish splashed into this other narration and conversation between Grady and Jack, right? It's just this social bullying that's happening there, and they're basically making Roger Ralph and then like eat it. So they're trying to force him to eat his own vomit, and they never explicitly say it. It's just like, it's insane. It's just crazy. And he doesn't, you pick it up from like one page to the bottom of another page, and then like you flip the page and then it's at another point. It's just one sentence here and there. And then, and so it's so poignant because the gore is like, it's implied. The horror is what isn't said. There's this social bullying, and it's rowdy. And at first you're like, well, maybe, that's just their thing. But he's like, at the end, he's like whining about it. He's like moaning, like he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's at this point where he's like hurt and drunk and like messed up. So they created a literal ghost out of Roger, that he stays tormented in the Overlook Hotel forever. And the atrocities done to him are encased in this book, The Shining, for everybody to see over and over again. And one sees this in like real life situations inside this sense of like magical realism that King has created. And the situations through a fog of horror fantasy is what I would like to say. People can identify with aspects of books. Or, I mean, at the very least, they have the option to, right? If they have the option to read these books at their libraries. So that's why I guess I wanted to also tie it back that book bans are scary. Some states are really going after books that have been on that were on my high school reading list, And so I wanted to finish up by saying like here's some of the books that are on the list of Stephen King's books that have been banned. So Apt Pupil, Carrie, It, The Drawing of the Three, The Gunslinger, The Long Walk, The Stand, The Tommyknockers, The Wastelands, Wizard and Glass, Dark Tower 4. And I think I read Carrie to you, but I wanted to touch on, there's this part in Carrie where it's her first time ever having her period during her menstruation. And it's during gym time, and the other girls are making fun of her and harassing her for getting her period. And she's not understanding what's happening to her body. She starts like freaking out because she's bleeding, and she's like, ah! You have to see it. It's sad. It's kind of funny, but it's also sad. And she doesn't understand what her body's doing because her mom was too Christian and too modest to explain her body's most basic functions, her most natural basic functions. And so that stuck with me, how these kids need to be able to access knowledge beyond what their parents are able to explain to them. People need to be able to learn multiple points of view. That's like I feel like the exact message of that exact moment. And it's really interesting because I think I read that Stephen King actually, he got that idea with the help of like running it by his wife, and she kind of talked to him about it. And I just think it's really important. And yes, that is violence and that is hazing. And I know we're late, but Domestic Violence Awareness Month is in October. And then we have these book bans like HB 1069. And it's just, I think it's very important to talk about, right? And I'll wrap up by saying, like, yeah, ghost stories were invented to keep people from going off path. But reading books is to help people find their own path, to show us multiple points of view. They educate us when our primary learning sources like family and friends do not have the ability to inform us about other subjects. Banning books goes against our rights of freedom of speech, don't you think? I mean, our freedom of protest, our freedom of the press. So there's this John Steinbeck quote that says, from The Grapes of Wrath, there's a crime here that goes beyond denunciation. There's a sorrow here that weeping cannot symbolize. Weeping cannot symbolize. There's a failure here that topples all our success. The fertile earth, the straight tree rows, the sturdy trunks, the ripe fruit, and children dying of pellagra must die because a profit cannot be taken from an orange. And coroners must fill in the certificate, died of malnutrition, because food must rot, must be forced to rot. The people come with nets to fish for potatoes in the river, and the guards hold them back. They come in rattling cars to get the dumped oranges, but the kerosene is sprayed. And they stand still and watch the potatoes float by. Listen to the screaming pigs being killed in a ditch and covered with quicklime. Watch the mountains of oranges slop down to putrefy ooze. And in eyes of the people, there is failure. And in the eyes of the hungry, there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people, the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for the vintage. That's by John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath. And in the eyes of the people, there is a failure. Because this food is not profit, people must die. And that's what books do. They show you paths and they help you to see multiple points of view. That's why book bans are so scary. So I'll leave you with a few things really quickly. 1, did you know that certain national parks carry liquid death? Well, now you do. I actually was on a little vacation, and this was a few weeks ago, and last year, and I actually got to buy a Liquid Death Rest in Peach. It's their iced tea with agave and vitamins, and it is so delicious. And yes, she's got that good time skirt stamp on. Her tramp stamp is right here. She's got her tramp stamp, and it's for a good time. #this, right? And so there's her little tramp stamp. This other one has it too. And so it has a microdose of natural caffeine. It's 30 milligrams per can because it's from natural black tea, agave nectar, black tea, and citric acid with natural flavors of peach, pear, and apricot. And it's got vitamin B6 and vitamin B12. And so this is my Liquid Death Rest in Peach that I was able to get at a national park. So yeah, thank you, national parks, for doing one thing right. No, I'm just kidding. For doing a ton of things right. Had a great time, and you should get your annual park pass today. I think it's only like $80 or something like that. And then the next thing I want to tell you is, getting back to the topic, how do people represent the ghosts in the shells of books and places? I'll say that again. How do people represent the ghosts in shells of books and places? How do books help shake off the ghosts that people carry? Thanks and Happy New Year. Whatever you do during this time, you don't have to give in to peer pressure. You don't have to jug that bottle of champagne just because other people's expectations say that you should. Be safe, and don't forget, wish you were fear. All right. Thanks, guys.